Alright everyone, Donald Trump is not the most coherent individual when he speaks off the cuff without at least having a few notes with him. I don't have this problem though, so I'm going to rephrase what he said because I know exactly what he meant, which is that there is the existence of an alt-left that encompasses specifically violent individuals on the far left such as Antifa. When Trump made his comments at the presser, where he was originally he was supposed to just talk about infrastructure, instead he went off onto a diatribe about the existence of leftist violence, not just in Charlottesville, but in other places as well. It takes two to tango, essentially. If you just have a far-right rally and they're just standing there shouting the Horst Wessel, that in and of itself is not a form of violence, it's a form of protected speech and expression. The same would be true if you get a bunch of leftists together and they want to sing the Soviet anthem. Well, if they're not hauling off and throwing rocks and nobody's throwing rocks at them, no crime, just people getting together and expressing themselves, not violent individuals in and of themselves. Here's the problem. Trump, unfortunately, despite dancing around the topic, because he knew what he was supposed to say, never actually used the word Antifa. He never actually used the word, communist militias or something like that. But they do exist in this country, and we need to be honest about the fact that they do. Look, here's the truth of the situation. The alt-left, like the alt-right, encompasses two separate, disparate groups of people. There are those that are specifically violent, and then there are those who are potentially ideologically hateful without actually being violent. What the alt-right and alt-left do not include are people on other parts of ideological fringes who have nothing specifically in common with those movements. They do not include individuals that are simply labeled as such by the so-called other side for having to be ideologically different. For example, somebody who's in the alt-right probably would consider somebody who's on the margins of the left to be alt-left. They would use that as a blanket term for basically the whole so-called other side. That's intellectually dishonest, because a garden variety liberal and indeed even a mainline progressive, they're not alt-left. They're probably not going to get violent. They're not particularly out there. Even those that are often will not become ideologically violent. Likewise, somebody who's an Antifa, openly Marxist in nature most likely, openly proclaims that some garden variety conservative is a fascist sympathizer and needs to be destroyed. And they openly proclaim this. Have these people at the New York Times or MSNBC actually spoken to anybody within these organizations who proclaims Marxism? Marxists openly decry the very concept of free speech and of public and private property as generally considered under our laws. Therefore, when they vandalize something, they don't see it as a criminal action, they see it as a revolutionary movement. When they attack a statue, when they break out shop windows, when they throw Molotov cocktails at the police, which they've done on many, many occasions, when they beat somebody to the ground, they've attacked innocent bystanders that have nothing to do with any right-wing movement. Some of them are probably progressives. I saw footage. No, this is months ago. I can't remember which protest it was. Antifa members showed up in a crowd of people that was originally, it was just some, I guess, college kids protesting against the far right or something. Antifa shows up and starts punching people. Some of the people they were attacking were part of the protesters they supposedly aligned with more loosely. Because in their own words, liberals get a bullet too, according to their philosophy. It's basically what they believe in. They consider the vast majority of self-proclaimed liberals and progressives in this country as almost as bad as a Nazi. And they are part of the alt-left. They are violent individuals. They are a recognized terrorist group in the state of New Jersey, just as white supremacy is now recognized as terrorism in the state of Illinois. Which is, I think, recognizing them as terroristic is not the right thing to do. Because there are certain people who agree fundamentally with the ideology without taking any action on behalf of that ideology. They're simply speaking and expressing themselves, whether online or in real life, whatever. But they're not the ones throwing the Molotov cocktails. They're not the ones hitting people with a riot baton or a baseball bat. Words are different from actions. They can incite. There can be incitement, certainly. They can incite violent action. If they're not, though, they're just words. They're just, hey, I'm giving my opinion, weird as it may be, bigoted or hate-filled as it may be. And there are people under the alt-right banner that do that. There are also people who are alt-left. Yes, the term is real. And saying that Trump tried to invent this term as a deflection is totally, totally wrong. If you hang around the internet for a while, you'll see oftentimes terms are popularized in underground circles long before anyone mainstream uses them. Trump is essentially appropriating a term that Sargon was using days ago, which is funny. Sargon, of all people. It's been used on various websites now for some time. As soon as alt-right began as a term, alt-left also was developed as its counterpart. How hard is it for people to understand that if you've got this general little umbrella of people that are very far right, have identitarian leanings of one form or another, some more violent than others, some more racially exclusive than others, like are they gonna have another debate over the Irish people or something like that? Who knows? They might actually do so. Likewise, there is an alt-left that involves very similar kind of mumblings. There are individuals that are violent, and then there are individuals who are bigoted. Maybe they're like, oh, you know, white males are so evil, but they don't actually go out and kill white males or something like that. And there are also people in the alt-right who say, oh, well, I don't like, you know, insert minority here, but they don't actually go out and burn the orphanage, so to speak. It's just the way that it works. And if we can't have this sane debate as a nation, and the government is allowed to take a totally lopsided approach to the issue, you're going to see more violence. Because one side feels emboldened, the other side feels suppressed. Both sides use that as a marketing strategy. Both of them grow. They antagonize and attack one another and many innocent bystanders in the process, by the way, on a more and more regular basis and a larger and larger scale. And then, as the commies on one side and the Nazis on the other get more and more violent and more antagonistic, each side additionally markets itself to other parts of the fringe, and I've pointed this out, saying, oh, well, look at those other guys, how violent and evil they are, but we're revolutionaries, we're fighting for some malleably defined virtuous system. So somebody on the far left, somebody who is alt-left, says we're fighting for the workers, we're fighting for minority rights and they use the term historically marginalized people, which is just about the most vague newspeak bullcrap you could imagine. Historically marginalized people. Well, go culture to culture, find out who's been marginalized over time. It's been almost everybody in every culture. So they say that, and then they say, well, look at those drooling Nazis. They want to, kill they want to lynch black people and burn synagogues. So you should stand with us and fight with us. And then people that normally are not given over to violence, they get attracted by that ideology. Likewise, the right wing grows too, because they say, oh, look at these evil commies. They want to destroy your private property, put you in a gulag, and strangulate the economy. They also, they really hate white people. So, you're white, so you should stand with us. And so both sides grow over time. And they get more and more problematic, more and more violent and antagonistic. At some point, they delve beyond street fighting into literal terrorism, as in they start building the pipe bombs or blowing themselves up or something. And we should be fucking worried about that as a culture. But unfortunately, our politicians and our media are so fucking stupid they can't tackle the issue. They're not going to protect jack shit. The police will try, but every time the police go into one of these areas, they're told, stay back, let them beat on each other. Then when the police do get dragged in because a bunch of people who are just recording things get punched by an Antifa member or run over by a Nazi or something, then they have to march in when things have already metastasized and become 10 times more violent. Oh no, don't put the police between these two groups of people that have a reason to attack one another. That makes a lot of sense. Then it's some idiot commissioner. It's not the lay police. They want to get involved and prevent violence. Most of the time, a lot of these dudes, they do a good job. Some idiot commissioner, some mayor or governor told him to stand down. Terry McAuliffe, or the mayor of Charlottesville, both have been indicated as being having great malfeasance in the public good in this situation. It's not just a case of a bunch of fanatics. Those fanatics are less likely to attack each other if the police presence is proper. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that was the case. In fact, there were some reports the police were trying to box them in close to each other at some points. I can't imagine that some a random riot cop thought up that strategy. I can't imagine they thought it was a good idea. It's possible that's the case. But there is an alt-left. Trump is wise to point this out. He's just not well-spoken enough to make his point coherently. He also was talking to the legacy media at the time, which means that anything he says will be used against him in the court of corporate media opinion. Now, if you go online, you see a different story. People are like, well, yeah, obviously there's an alt-left. We've seen the fruits of their evil many times. We've seen cops get, their skin fucking burned off by a Molotov cocktail. We've seen some immigrant-owned shop with all of its windows smashed out. We've seen them burning cars and, doing all sorts of things, throwing fireworks at people. Yeah, Antifa does this regularly. And that's a problem. But you're not going to see it openly discussed because they're going to decry the very notion that there is anybody on the far left who's violent. No, Antifa are just, they're anti-fascist because that's what they term themselves. Well, bullshit. That's a term they invent. That doesn't mean that's their actual moniker. That's just a description they use for themselves. But you've got to understand, and I don't think many people do, they consider some regular liberal, some, regular Democrat to be a fascist. They are against you. They consider you an enemy. One they'll tolerate as long as the far right is around. As soon as the far right's gone, they'd attack you too if they had the ability. And sometimes they do. They just march in and start throwing rocks. Some skinhead strike movement, you think that they're white supremacists, but you think they care if the people they attack are white? No, I'll attack them too. Oh, well, this person's a traitor, that person's a cuck, this person's, a degenerate because I just saw them smoke a cigarette or something. And so they broaden and broaden and broaden the number of people they really want to beat on or coerce in some way. It's because we're dealing with authoritarian movements here. Authoritarians are abusive. They always have been, they always will be. People saying that I should stick to my tribe because I'm white. Well, what if I consider the United States to be my tribe? Well, you might find that to be problematic, but I mean, you actually think you're going to seize control and deport like all non-white people, so I think some of you aren't necessarily playing with a full deck. These people in Antifa, they think they're going to rise up and, I guess, enslave the middle class in the rock quarry. Meanwhile, and it's like when Mitt Romney was defending these people in a general essence, by ignoring the fact that Antifa's a problem, he's siding with them in a way. He doesn't seem to realize that they consider him to be not only a literal fascist, but a rich literal fascist. And if they had their way, he would be in a gulag, and his properties would certainly get repossessed. They'd be, they'd be turned into something else. One of them would be the anarchist meeting house. Another one of his, 7 or 8 houses. The one with the car elevator would become a bunker. They'd put plywood around it and stuff to fight the resistance or something. Another one would be turned into a school for deaf kids or something. So yeah, Mitt, they would gladly come to your house and smash your windows out too. You do realize that? You're not winning any favors. You think you're going to win over people who think that anyone to the right of Marx is a fascist? You think that you're going to win them over? Yeah, I'm sure you would enjoy that. Their idea of a tax plan. Their tax plan is Mitt Romney just gave up all of his wealth. Now he's a serf like we are. And we took that and we bought more ammunition so we could go fight more imaginary Nazis or something. There's an alt-left in this country. There's an alt-left all throughout the world. It's the rise of polarization within Western civilization. It's happening in Europe. It's happening here. When an election in Austria boils down to about half the population supporting communism light and about half the population supporting nationalism light, yeah, what more do I fucking need to say? It takes two to tango here. Antifa exists. There are communists in this country. And by the way, as one last aside, people saying, oh, it's an American tradition to kill Nazis. Yeah, it was. Of course, we fought them in World War II. That we then launched on a half century of fighting communists. So, aren't these both American traditions? I would think supporting that third way, which is liberty, is the American way, to the exclusion of people on both of these so-called ends. And they're really not ends, they're just a dipole of liberty itself because they're all authoritarians. So you're giving artificial importance to left and right. Doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, who cares which boot just came down on your head? You're still getting booted in the head. That's about all. Peace out.